No role plays, no conference calls, no BS. Chris and Lorenzo share 4 decades of combined experience to help you become a more effective leader. This is Hacking Your Leadership.
Hey everyone, this is Chris.
And Lorenzo.
And welcome to our Best of Saturday series. Now that we have hundreds of episodes, we get a lot of listeners asking us where to start.
So we'll be selecting some of our most popular episodes to share each Saturday from our years of podcasting. We hope you enjoy it.
Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And Lorenzo, on this episode, I want to talk about a TV series that I got into a little bit late, but I've been relatively happy that I got into, and that is Ted Lasso. Have you seen it?
I have recently as well. Same thing, late to the party, but binge watched the first season over a couple of days, just even this last week.
Yeah, so for anybody who doesn't know, it started as a Saturday Night Live skit, and I remember seeing it and thinking it was funny on SNL a long time ago, almost a decade ago. But I finally sat down to give it a shot because of people saying that I should. And at some point in watching it, I saw that it was a show about leadership. And I think it's something that was a little profound. Did you get that impression too?
Absolutely. Same way. Like I had heard that it was pretty funny. I got a chance to kind of watch it, and I was probably a good maybe 2 or 3 episodes in when I realized, like, oh, okay, so like this is about somebody showing up as kind of like their authentic self and how they believe the world to be and what they believe that leadership is when it comes to leading a sports team. And as the show went on, their commitment, as in Ted Lasso's commitment to making that happen, becomes more and more, and you start to see more of these very specific approaches and lessons and interactions and just overall, thoughts on his belief in how to lead a team to success and what the most important things are when it comes to leadership.
One of the things that he does really well that I think a lot of leaders can sometimes struggle with is the balance between confidence and ego. And it's really hard to get that right. I've struggled with that in my career. There are times when I'm not confident in what I'm doing, and then I show up with a complete lack of ego, but I can also show up with a lack of confidence too. That's never inspiring. And then sometimes when I'm really confident in what I'm doing, if I'm not really careful on how I show up in those spaces, it can come off as having an ego. And one of the things that I think that he does well is thread that needle. There's a lot of confidence especially in the face of naysayers, in the face of what people are telling him, well, you should do this, you should do that, and him kind of having this resolve to say, I see a bigger picture here, and I'm not gonna, kind of fall victim to the whims of others who may have a thought about how things should go, but they aren't necessarily as invested in the process or in the outcomes, and they don't necessarily have as much to lose in the outcomes as I do. So I'm going to be able to confidently say that that I am going to stay the course. Now that's great. I love it when a leader can do that, but it's really hard to do that without it looking like, no, I know what I'm doing. I don't need you to help me or to be around me because I got this. And that's when it hits the ego. Is this something that you've ever struggled with personally, like where you have to kind of exude confidence that you know the way forward, but you also don't want to have it come off like you're unwilling to hear a difference of opinion or to get another idea in the room? There's kind of that balance between that confidence and ego,
No, absolutely. Yeah, I think that having a good, belief in your own ways of doing things, in your own leadership and what you've seen his work over the past, knowing who you are as a leader. We've talked before about like what's your one sentence definition of leadership? How do you see leadership? Having a vision, being clear about what you expect from people, what they should expect from you. Like we spent a lot of time talking about being very, very clear in your own thoughts on how you lead people. I think that provides a certain level of confidence in understanding that some things, no matter what team and what place you're at, some of these things do not change whatsoever. However, there's definitely been times where because of the dynamics, because of the environment, because of previous conversations, discussions, promises, letdowns that have happened with the team, that even if this is something that's not necessarily what you would do, you've got to be able to be open to allowing some of that space to exist. You've got to be able to open to step back and say, I know long term this is what I believe and this is my vision, but I also know in the short term these decisions are important as well, and I have to let that happen. And I think even in the show, without spoiler alerting too much, there's actually a part in one of the episodes later on in the first season where he gets challenged by his assistant coach on saying that this needs to happen. And he didn't believe that. He said, well, I'm not going to let that happen. Like, it's not how I do things. I would not do that. And then there's some interactions that happen. There's some more insight that's given. And then he comes to the realization that he has to trust those around him. And he has to trust those that also are observing different things that actually matter. And it was really interesting. It was really good because it showed exactly what you were saying, which is that his ego and it was taking over and like, well, that's not what I do. And then after taking some time to think about it, realizing that if you're not going to take the advice and thoughts and ideas of those around you who want exactly the same goal, who are there with you, that are looking to achieve the same thing, if you're not willing to take their insight and then potentially make an adjustment, then why are they there? And how does that make them feel? And how do they feel if they're adding value, or if you trust them or you believe in what they do in their role? So I think it is one of those things that can be a really hard thing to balance as a leader. I think that you've got to be confident in the things that you know are universal, but then also say that we're going to do this together, and I'm going to need your help. And I want to have some conversations here around what you need specifically, but what our team needs, and I'm willing to make adjustments, and I want to hear from all of you. And then you have to put that into practice. You have to lead a meeting, lead a conversation, have a round table with some people, and then just shut up and listen, and then that's kind of what you have to do to allow them the opportunity to express what they're doing, take some notes, and then put forth some actions.
Yeah, that's so true. I think, this happens in a lot of places where if a person is so vocal, and I don't want to say loud isn't necessarily the right word for it, but it could just be, if their voice fills the space to the point where another voice doesn't feel welcome in that space, it can come off as a lack of confidence in what you're doing. I think one of the things that belies confidence is that you want dissenting opinions, because one of two things will happen if you get a dissenting opinion. Either you will leave that conversation more confident in your way of doing things is the right way because it was challenged and it kind of survived that challenge, or it gives you more information and allows you to change what your strategy is because it was good information. Either way, it's a win if you allow it to be that way. If the only win to you is that, my way survived all the challenges, well, then you're going to find a way to make your way survive the challenges. You'll make that happen in your own head, and you'll end up going forward regardless of whether or not your decision is the right way. But yeah, I like that example because it shows that he doesn't know everything. And even if he's right, sometimes being right isn't necessarily the win in the long term. You may have won that individual conversation. Maybe your way was right and the other person's way was wrong. But what did you do to that person's confidence and their ability to lead other people and their ability to contribute to your team by winning in that particular moment? You've kind of like won the battle but lost the war. Sometimes the strategic leadership decision, especially if you're a leader of leaders, is to be okay with losing a little battle to be able to win the war. Because if that decision that you wanted to have go your way because you were so adamant about this, if you let it go a different way and it ends up being the wrong decision, the person who made that hopefully will learn from it. They'll learn that there was a different way of doing things, and that learn is just, it's so invaluable. It's not a learn that can ever be taught by somebody just saying, well, if you do this, then this is going to happen. It's like there's no such thing as a child who just won't touch the hot stove, right? Like at some point, the only way is to have them touch the hot stove. And you just hope that it happens early enough in their life where it becomes something where you put some ice on it for 10 minutes and then they're fine and they move on. If you continually stop your people from making those decisions that will end up in failure, in little failures, eventually they're going to be unprepared and they're going to end up making a decision that results in a failure that is career stalling or career ending. And you'll be the one to blame for it because you essentially kind of saved them from themselves and never allowed them to kind of be in a situation where they saw the consequences of their own actions. And so I think that's such a an important part of leadership, but it's something that a lot of leaders, I think, maybe have a hard time doing sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another thing that the show highlights is, as the leader, one of the times that you should step in, and one of the times that you should not step in. And there are moments, with his new team in the locker room where there are things that are going on that somebody says you should address this, and he says, I'm not going to address it because if I address it, it's not going to stop. It's actually going to get worse. And so something else needs to happen. Somebody else needs to address that, and it's not going to be me. And then there's the times where he steps out of the office and he goes and he has a conversation with somebody in public in front of the team to land a point about something as well. So I'm like, I really like that part of it, because I think that it really speaks to understanding that, we talk a lot about culture and what builds culture, and we talk a lot about, the importance of peer accountability and how much more peer accountability means to someone than just direct accountability from their boss or from their leader. And so like I enjoyed it. Of course, I watch these shows with the lens of leadership because we talk about it so much, and this is kind of what we do for a living. But being able to see it play out that way with intent, because again, you and I talked a little bit about the show, which is like, is it just going to be just a silly show? Is he going to kind of like make wonderful things happen just because like he just stumbles into it? He's kind of a goofy guy. And then you realize very quickly that he's actually has intent with what he's doing. He understands the dynamics of leadership. He understands the space that you have to have a team kind of have a players only meeting, and why peer accountability matters so much. He understands that you have to have behaviors that bring people into the mix, that's inviting for everybody to feel a part of the team. He understands that, even great players or great producers with bad attitudes can be a poison to the team. And if they continue to put themselves in front of the team, you have to address that as the leader or as the coach. And people have to see you address that as a leader or the coach, because that's, what we talked about maybe a couple of weeks ago about having somebody who just needs to go and he needs to be off the team. And what happens if you leave somebody on a team who is causing disruption and is a negative person. And so like all of these things are addressed and discussed and shown in real time. And I really appreciate his approach, and I appreciate his balance, and something that you always say, like, I appreciate his consistency of how he shows up for everyone, because now they kind of have this expectation of how he's going to show up. And in those times when he has to either maybe elevate a little bit, it makes a lasting impact. People realize, oh, this is a little bit different than normally how we see him. So I need to pay attention. I need to be in the moment with this, because it's a little bit off character, but it's not too far out of character.
I like that he doesn't know really at the beginning anything about what he's supposed to be doing. It's almost like you could have put him in leading any type of team, any type of sports team in any discipline, in any sport, and it would have gone the same way. And that really shows the universality of the way he leads, and that at the end of the day, people are people. It doesn't matter whether you're a soccer player or a football player or someone who sits in a cubicle. What the human being wants and needs from a standpoint of human connection, and to see out of a person who says, "Follow me, I will take you there." It's very, very similar across the board about what we want out of our leaders, and what we gravitate towards as people versus what makes us shy away. And so I like that part of it. When I started watching it, the initial impression I got was that he was going to be like almost like a Michael Scott from The Office character, almost like leading by accident. And while that's funny, it's funny. It's almost like, you say one thing that you didn't really mean to say, and everything becomes okay. He definitely is very intentional, like you said, and it took a few episodes to kind of get that impression, but the idea of not knowing what you're doing is a really cool element of this, because it shows that first of all, if you don't know what you're doing, you have to trust your people, right? If you are a subject matter expert, and this is one of the things that I think a lot of the workforce gets wrong, is that because we promote people into leadership roles who were the best at doing whatever it is that team was doing, So if you're the best engineer, then you get to lead the engineers. If you're the best salesperson, you get to lead the salespeople. It's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, they're not the same skills as leadership. Leadership skills are not the same as sales skills or engineering skills or whatever. So it needs to be sometimes different people. On the same token, sometimes the knowledge you bring with you for how you did whatever that thing is can hurt you in leading your team if you believe you know everything already. On the one hand, a lot of industries change very quickly. So if you do something every day and then you start leading a team of people doing that, it's possible that what they're doing 6 months later is actually different than what you did 6 months earlier because of how fast some industries change. But it's also possible that, if you were part of a team of 10 or 50 or 5,000 people, that you have 10 or 50 or 5,000 different ways of kind of tweaking things or doing things that all seem to work for those people. And if you go in there and start saying, well, this is the way I did it, so now this is the way everybody's going to do it, all you're going to do is alienate your people. And that's not how leaders kind of build coalition around a common goal. And so I think sometimes if I'm a leader of people and the team I'm leading is tasked with doing things where I know I'm not an expert at doing them, or I even have never done them, a lot of times it's freeing because it says, okay, I can't rely on my knowledge of the subject because I don't have any. I need to rely on the knowledge of the people who are doing it. That can be so empowering to those people, and it can be the kind of the catalyst to you building that trust in yourself as a leader.
Yeah, and another part that you brought up that I think I experienced in my own leadership career was that where I was with a company for 10 years and very comfortable and knew everything and every system and all the ways that things happened, and then went with a new company and a new organization where same industry, sold things, fixed things, stuff like that, but not a clue with the operational aspects of how things were run, from systems to loss prevention to scheduling to I had no idea on anything. It was all different. And what I had to do was really lean into saying, well, I don't need to know them all. I need to know enough of them to be able to have a sense of what's good or bad, or where I can lean in to figure things out. But I really just need to lead a team. That's what I'm doing here. Have you ever had that experience where you've transitioned from one thing to the other, where you had the confidence of what you needed to do, but you had no concept of the actual job itself, or what the day-to-day operations were?
Yeah, twice in my life, and once it was very frustrating because I thought the way forward was to try to immerse myself and learn everything that I could about the way things were so that I could hold people accountable to doing those particular things. And it's amazing what you think you know. They talk about that knowledge curve where people who know nothing kind of understand they know nothing, but then when you know a little bit, your belief of what you think you know just skyrockets. You think you know everything. And then as you get to know more and more and more, one of the cool things that happen is that you start to get a more realistic sense of what you actually don't know, and it becomes a more realistic kind of what you know and what you think you know kind of line back up again. But you have to be doing it long enough to kind of get there, and you'll never be able to do it as a leader long enough as the people who are just doing it every day, unless you just stop being a leader and you want to go do that job. So yes, the first time that I was young in my career and I failed miserably at doing it because that's what I tried to do. And then since then, again, it becomes do I look at it as a challenge of, I don't know this stuff, I need to know it, or do I look at it as freeing? It's freeing to not know all of these things, to not be burdened with the, it's like I was told once, I snowboarded once in my life, and the first thing that the instructor said was, do you ski? And I said no, and they said good, because it's easier to teach snowboarders how to snowboard if they've never skied. And it's like I didn't have to unlearn anything, or I couldn't rely on it as a crutch, or that I thought I know. I had to go into it thinking, okay, what do I have in my arsenal? What do I have in my tool belt? Well, what I had in my tool belt was my people. I had my people, and that's it. And if you go into it thinking that that's the only tool that you have to lean on them. And there's nothing that empowers your people more than when you as the leader go to them and say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't want you to teach me how to do it. I want you to tell me, kind of immerse me in this. Tell me why this is done this way, or why it's good to do it this way. I think that's just a really empowering thing, and it can engage people in a team.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to this episode's 1-minute hack. But first, a few words from our sponsors.
The 1-minute hack.
All right, for this episode's 1 minute hack, I will say first, go watch Ted Lasso if you haven't yet. I think it's worth it. I think it's worth binging and getting in there, especially if you want to improve your leadership style. It's funny, definitely, but you will learn a lot as a leader. And I want to go over kind of like 3 things that I think kind of encompass Ted Lasso's leadership style. And I think if you want to take these with you, you will become a better leader yourself. The first is you want to make sure you're teaching other people to believe in themselves, not to believe in you. If you teach people to believe in themselves, they will believe in you as the person who allowed them to do that, as the person who taught them to believe in themselves. If you try to teach people to believe in you as a leader, you will always fail. The second thing is surround yourself with experts. Don't try to be an expert in the things yourself. You are the leadership expert because you are the leader. So become a leadership expert. Don't become an expert in the things that you're expecting your people to do. And then the third is make sure you have a very, very clear vision and a goal in mind, because then when people come with kind of alternating point of views or differing ways of doing things, you can kind of put those through the filter of whatever that North Star is for you, whatever that vision is, and decide whether or not that person is going to contribute to that or detract from it. Having that clear goal means that it's much easier to ignore people who are looking out for their short-term interests that will be a detriment to your long-term interests.
Yeah, I think it's a great 1 minute hack, and just a reminder that we can take leadership lessons from just about anywhere, including television shows, especially when they're well written and they actually give you what that kind of that leadership theory looks like in real time. I think I'm looking forward to watching season 2, and my hope is that we'll continue to see more and more of that leadership approach kind of playing out in the locker room and on the field.
Yeah, I completely agree. We'll link in the podcast description below the a YouTube link of the kind of the original genesis of Ted Lasso, which is an old Saturday Night Live skit. Watching that, it's like 2 or 3 minutes long, will give you a good idea of what the show is about just from a content standpoint before watching it. But again, if you want to improve your leadership style, definitely take interest in the show. I think you'll enjoy it.
And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode. This is Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll talk to you all next time.